This next series of short video clips will tell part of the story, but this video is to tell you the whole story because we had a life-threatening emergency and didn't get a chance to video much of it because we were trying to save our lives and save our vessel. On our second night out, leaving Chicago, or actually Hammond, Indiana, because we'd already sailed over to Hammond Marina, we were anchored outside of St. Joseph, Michigan, about 4 miles south of the harbor, unprotected anchorage. But we had excellent wind forecast, 0 to 5 knots that night. Checked the weather, no threatening storms within 1,000 miles. Checked the NOAA buoys, everything was 0 to 3 feet and declining. Should have been a beautiful night anchored on the Lake Michigan. But during the night, a huge thunderstorm cell, probably 100 miles across, developed over to the west and come across the northern part of Lake Michigan. When we went to bed on anchor, we had 0 to 1 foot seas, no wind, just nice rolling, rocking us to sleep. Me and my crewmate, Sonia Erickson, went to bed at, 9 o'clock, early to bed, early to rise. That's what sailors do. At 1 o'clock in the morning, my bunk is underneath. This is a CNC 39 with a rear cockpit. So my bunk actually extends underneath the cockpit on the port side. I've got the double bunk. So I'm laying there asleep and I wake up to horrible, horrible sounds. It sounded like ship bells, ding, ding, ding. Violent rocking motion, which I was sleeping through. I'm on a boat. Not a problem with that. But snaps and pops and bangs, and the bell ringing had me confused, and I'm coming out of this deep sleep, and it's like, what in the heck is going on? So I stick my head out of the cabin, and I'm in these violent 9-foot waves, which isn't a big deal. I mean, the CNC cuts through that stuff like butter. A little bit pitchy because they're short duration, so every third or fourth one would come over the bow and splash me. And I run up to the helm, and I'm hearing these like ship bells, and I'm confused. And every time the ship bell sound would go off, like ding, the helm would shudder and vibrate, and I could feel these violent vibrations back here at the helm. This continued for a moment where I'm like, what in the heck is going on? I got to figure this out. And again, it's 1 in the morning. I just woke up, so I dive back down on my bunk. I have access to the steering from both sides of the boat, port and starboard, at the foot end of the bunks, and opened up the access panel and look in there with a light. And my steering cables are off my quadrant. My rudder is violently swinging from left to right. It's blown through the steering stops and cut through the reinforced rib in the hull that the steering stops are bolted to. And I didn't see it immediately, but it had broken 2 of my vertical steering pulleys, but I didn't notice that at the moment. Things were happening fast, so I had a general idea that something's fouled my rudder. I checked my Navionics app. I have I track myself on anchorage, so if I wake up in the middle of the night, am I dragging? It's like, okay, no, I'm still on my anchor road. I'm in an arc. I don't have any vertical lines away from that arc. And I'm like, what in the heck is going on? But this violent smashing sound and the pinging and the banging and the vibrations, I realized my rudder was free. It had been driven through the steering stops. The cables had jumped the quadrants. And I thought I could feel the rudder coming all the way around through what was the steering stop, smashing against the hull. And afraid that the rudder was going to puncture my hull and sink my vessel, I had to get control of it. I've got a tiller, but the emergency steering stop is a square post that protrudes out of my helm, just in front of the helm for ease of access. I don't have to open anything to get to it. And I'm watching this rotate through these arcs, 270 degrees, almost 300 degrees, and saying there's no way I can get my tiller on that. I'll try and get it caught, and the force of that's going to swing over. It's going to break my arm. It's going to take my fingers off. Whatever. It was too dangerous. So I snatched open my bilge cover, nice teak decks in the bottom of my boat, and that's where I keep a emergency steering wrench. I think it's 1 1/8 inch, 1 1/16, but it'll fit my tiller steering too. And grab some spare line out of my line drawer. I've got plenty of spare small lines accessible right there coming out of the cabin. I screamed at my crewmate and woke her up. She was sleeping peacefully through all this. Sonia, all hands on deck. Our life is in danger. The vessel is threatened with sinking. Dress up, life jacket up, harness up, get out here on deck. And while she was doing that, I jumped out into the cockpit through the wrench on the square tiller protrusion, and got the rudder under control, braced myself, port to starboard, held on to the wrench, and until she got suited up and could lash off, because we were pitching in 9-foot seas, I just held it. And it was a struggle. But once she got up on deck, I got her to help hold it with me, and we're both in harness, life jackets, foul weather gear, safety tethered off in the helm. I had my freaking dinghy still in the helm, lashed to the front of my helm, because I haven't built my davits to hang it yet, and I don't want to tow it all the way to Florida. So I had to unlash that and throw it up out of the way before I could get to all this. And we were able to, the two of us, hold the wrench on there. I had the open end on it because the round end won't fit. Or it might fit, but it's a square stem. They generally don't. It's got to be 6-point for like a nut. And I was able to use parachute cord, which is, we call it 550 cord, 550-pound breaking strength cord, to lash the open end of the wrench down to the tiller steering, so it wouldn't jump off and we'd lose control of the rudder again. And once we had that lashed down, I was able to direct my crewmate back into the V-berth, which on my vessel is not a bunk yet. I'm going to convert it. It was built as a racer, used as a racer. It's done the Chicago to Mackinac race 10 times. And that's what the previous owners, did more racing with the yacht clubs than they did cruising. And my spare lines were there, and I told her which lines to grab. And I was able to go through the open end of the wrench, or the closed end, I call it the box end, and with the middle of the line, and tie trucker's hitches. Look them up, sailors. They will be invaluable for lashing gear down, or lashing a rudder down one day. Learn how to do those. It's an inline figure 8 in the direction you want tension. And I went through my port and starboard cleats that are inside my helm, just in front of the helm, inside the cockpit, and trucker hitched both sides. And in the videos, you'll see the wrench looks like it's about 45 degrees offset. And it is, because it's an offset wrench. But I've got it secured with trucker's hitches, port and starboard, and stabilized the rudder, tied it down in a centered position, which I have a rudder indicator also on my steering tiller connection, and secured it. And the waves were picking up. The winds never really picked up. This was the amazing thing about Lake Michigan, and not being a Great Lakes sailor, I've heard, well, that's how it works. Those thunderstorms come across the lake maybe 100 miles north of me. I'm in the southern end of the lake, and sent these waves south out of nowhere. Unpredictable. And they built they were at 9 feet at least, crashing over the bow every second or third wave because of the short wave period. I'd surf up the first one, come down, surf up the second one, come down, surf up the third one, and then bunge plow through the third or fourth one. And they were building. So we actually slept in the cockpit in our foul weather gear, tethered off to both sides, so that we could monitor and maintain control of this rudder and it wouldn't smash through the stern of the boat and sink us. By morning, the seas had built to 12 feet. And we were taking some bow of the stern plunges pretty intense. It was pretty soaking out here. So we abandoned the cockpit because we were positive that it had held between 2 in the morning by the time I got it secured and daybreak at 7-ish, it was an overcast day, that if it held that long, we snugged everything back up. I put another layer of 550 cord lashing down to the emergency rudder stop. I put a second set of lines between the wrench and the cleats, so now I had 2 lines each way with trucker's hitches securing it. We were confident and exhausted. We went down below and went to sleep, waiting for the waves to die down so I could get back in the steering compartment and get my steering cables back on the quadrants, get everything adjusted back up and go into port. We were awakened by the sound of a loud horn, probably about 11 a.m. Got about 5 hours sleep, 4 hours sleep. And it was the Coast Guard. Apparently the people that lived up in the, I'm gonna call them mansions because that's what they were, on Lake Erie, overlooking Lake Erie, had been watching us through their telescopes and binoculars. They seen us anchor, and that's why you live on the lake or the water, so you can watch the boats and enjoy life. When we hadn't left in the morning and they seen the violent seas we were in, they become concerned and contacted Coast Guard. We had turned the VHF off because there were rescue after calls for assistance, for men overboard in those high waves, and it was just too much chatter. We were safe, we were confident, we were in the right vessel, we were not in any danger. So the Coast Guard asked how we're doing. We say, yep, had some steering issues, something fouled our rudder last night. Our anchor is holding. I had a Danforth 40-pounder out on 35 feet of chain and 250 feet of road, and monitoring my anchor rode swing. I didn't drift over and snag it. Something had fouled my rudder, ripped it off the steering stops, blew through the steering stops, broke a couple steering pulleys, and lost control over it. So my intent was to crawl up in there when the waves died down, put it back on and go to port. Probably about 4 o'clock that evening, the waves settled back down to under 6 feet, 5 to 6 feet. But the boat's riding well in them. And I got my headlamp and my tools, and I crawled back in the steering compartment underneath the helm. And that's when I realized that I had 2 broken steering pulleys, and there was just no way I could do this repair safely, get into harbor myself without parts. So I decided to call for a tow, Boat US, and request a tow into port. The tow vessels in St. Joseph are old LSTs from World War II. They couldn't handle the waves. They were getting reflective waves off the rock jetties, 6 to 8 feet, even though I was only in 5 to 6 feet, 4 miles south. And they were taking water over the bow. It wasn't safe for them to come out. They called us back, told us they tried. They'd give it, till later on in the evening before dark, check again. The wave buoys were still going crazy on the NOAA sites down at the nuclear power plant south of us and at one of the other buoys north of us. So they said, ride her out through the night. We'll check her in the morning, come get you then. We weren't in any danger. We still had control of the rudder. Morning, they tried to make it back out of harbor again. Waves over their bow. They're an open boat vessel. Called us back, said no can do. So we sat there till afternoon, and my crewmate was getting impatient, so she called the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard explained to her, you're not in danger, if your boat's sinking, we'll come get you, but other than that, ride it out. She got in contact with the tow company, finally got in contact with the owner, and he explained to her that, we can't come tow you unless it's safe. And finally, the next day in the afternoon, they actually brought a boat from another port, a big inflatable 25-footer with twin 250 outboards on the back that could handle the 6-foot seas. And since I had a rudder still in a fixed position, and I had my engine, instead of having 2 tow vessels, one for an anchor vessel to keep us in line and one towing us, I was able to use my engine power as a sea anchor to keep our tow line tight. And they were able to tow us into St. Joseph Harbor. At the entrance of the harbor, again, they were 6 to 9 footers from reflected waves to keep from surfing down onto the towboat, losing slack, and drifting off into the rock jetties. I actually had full power in reverse. I sucked the transom of this vessel down to where I had 6 inches of water in my cockpit coming up through my floor drains. But we made it into safely harbor. The first marina didn't have boat stands. All they had were if you brought your own cradle, which I didn't bring a cradle with me. So we went up to Anchor's Way Marina, and they pulled us out of the water. We inspected the hull and rudder, no damage, dropped us back in, and did the repairs at the T-dock. But the short videos don't tell you all the story. I figured I'd take the time to tell you the whole story so you'll understand the following videos. And something fouled the rudder. Don't know what it was. We were guessing it was a old fishing net because there's only a small scuff on it. The rudder never did contact the hull. I was hearing things slam down in the steering compartment. So the rudder got bent maybe 1/4 of a degree to looking from the bow back to port. A little bit more than it needs to be for clear the prop shaft, but not enough to interfere with steering or nothing. So we didn't do any of that, but we did replace the pulleys. We were able to straighten the cables out. They weren't kinked dangerously or damaged, and readjust everything. Epoxy in a new piece of marine plywood after we cut out the shark's tooth shaped hole where the quadrant had sliced through the ribs. Build some new rudder stops out of 1/4-inch aluminum plate instead of like 16 gauge aluminum plate to bolt over the reinforced repaired area, and set sail again. But that's our story. We're sticking to it. Hope you enjoy the short videos showing the damage, repairs, and what we did to get back under sail. Happy cruising.